Hey guys, welcome back to another video on my channel. In today's video, we're going to be analyzing some new polling. We do have 16 days until election day, so it is very important to go over the polling in the final weeks leading up to the election. Now, just remember that polling isn't everything. It definitely is not everything. We all know how inaccurate polling could be, mostly on one side being leaning to the left. But it's also important to look at polls to see where we're really at as a country and where these polls stand. They're obviously not going to be 100% accurate, but people have been saying, they're more accurate this time around. That's what I've heard from a lot of people. I'm expecting them to be more accurate than they were in 2020 and 2016. So we're definitely going to have to find out about that. But what we do know right now is that some interesting trends are going on in this polling, in the national polling and in the state polling that we're going to check out in a bit. But before we continue, please subscribe if you're new to this channel, like this video, put all your comments and questions in the section below, and please check out my other content once you're done watching this video. And let's get started on realclearpolitics.com. They track, obviously, the national popular vote. They track approval ratings, direction of the country, polling in states, Senate polling. Real Clear Politics really has everything. I'm sure most of you already know what Real Clear Politics is, but for the ones that don't know, I just explained what it is. It is an aggregate. They have a lot of polls that they include in there. Most polls that are more well-known, obviously ones that were created this cycle, have to go through a process to be able to be accepted into the aggregate. But most of the mainstream polls, as well as other accepted polls, are included in here. And they have Harris up by 0.9% right now. And the worrying sign about her was this was double the margin only a week ago. And that's because the polls that have came out in the first week or two of October had showed her narrowing a little bit, but not enough to get me to think that maybe Trump could win the popular vote. But then came this week, and this week of polling has been absolutely brutal for the Harris campaign because Trump leads 4 out of the 5 polls released, and the only one where he's not leading is a very reliable Emerson poll that only has Harris up by 1. The TIPP poll, extremely accurate in 2020, in 2016, even in the midterms, has Trump up by 2. Atlas Intel, same thing. From 2016 all the way to 2022, extremely accurate polling, has Trump up by 3. Rasmussen reports Trump up by 2. Fox News, Trump up by 2. And the polls before that do have her up by a little bit more. We do have Morning Consult in there, and Harris and Marist, which are very liberal, skewing in their methodology and in their sampling. But we can go to the graph over here and really analyze what has happened over the past couple months. Actually, we'll put it here so you guys can see it better. Kamala Harris did end up taking the ticket from Joe Biden around this time, July 21st to be exact, and she skyrocketed up to a pretty high point at around 1.6%. She remained steady, and at this point, there was still a bunch of undecideds, around maybe 6% undecideds, so many people were really deciding who to vote for. Then around September, she exceeded to her heights, where she took at around a 2-point lead mid-September, and then ever since October has really come, it has remained stable. But ever since the middle of October has came, especially this week, she has remained steady. But Donald Trump has gone from around 47% all the way up to almost 48.5%. And that spells a lot of trouble because it shows us that she's not losing support, but she's also not gaining support. And these remaining voters are coming from undecided voters. These are all undecided voters. And if undecided voters, which are mostly independent, break for Trump a lot more than they're breaking for Harris, which seems to be the case because she's been around 49% for the past month, and Trump has gone from around 46, 47 all the way up to 48.3. This means that she is pretty flat in her polling. And we can see that in the swing states too. If we go to the battlegrounds, these are all the 7 most important battlegrounds. Trump is up by 1% across all 7 of them. And we can see here over the past few months, she had closed the gap. She had a narrow lead for a long time. And then once again, Donald Trump has been exceeding, and she has actually been falling consistently to a point now where he does lead by a point in all of the polls combined together. If you get a little bit of a closer look, you can see here how it's pretty much going back to what it was when she first came in, before that polling bump for her, that enthusiasm rush really kicked in. And now it seems that enthusiasm rush is kind of dying out. Some states more specific, we see Arizona, Trump is up in every poll except for one, maintaining a consistent lead. This is one of the states where he has maintained a pretty consistent lead for a long time. In the state of Nevada, she had been leading the entire time she has entered the race. Donald Trump has actually taken a narrow lead as of this week. Same thing in Wisconsin. She had had a pretty solid lead most of the cycle going into it. And just recently, Trump has also taken a very narrow lead. Same thing again with the state of Michigan. He leads by 1.2%. Harris only leads one poll. Another state where she entered the race, she looked pretty strong, leading by 2 to 2.5 points in the state of Michigan. And just as October came, Trump has taken over that lead. The state of Pennsylvania, where he does lead by a 0.8 percentage points. This is the closest one in terms of polling when we get to all the Rust Belt states. And this is the last one we have, so you can compare them to the other Rust Belt states and see that Trump has always been doing the best in this one. And at this point, he has taken a lead and has kept it for a little bit. North Carolina too, he does lead by 0.5%. And this is a state that has been also good for him and really, really close in the polls. So we'll see how that changes over the next 2 weeks. And then in Georgia, she hasn't led a poll since that Wall Street Journal. Once again, another state that Trump has been doing good in. It seems that Trump originally was doing very good in the Sun Belt, but was struggling a little bit in the Rust Belt. But now it seems like the polls are agreeing that Trump is also catching up in the Rust Belt because he is winning over more undecideds than she is winning. Now, okay, it's not good to just use one polling aggregate site. So let's get some input on another one. And I'm sure most of you already know this one. This is 538. They're one of the most famous ones, as well as Real Clear Politics. They both generally at this point are aligning on the popular vote. We see here 538 does things a little bit differently, where they give a grade to each polling site, but they lean left, so they seem to sometimes give a higher grade for polls that favor Democrats more, even if they're not accurate. For example, this poll added to the national average, Marist over here, the Marist poll does have Harris up by 5 points. It does receive an A rating according to 538, but that is a very false A rating because Marist is not accurate. They lean very left, and they actually produced a D+7 sampling, and this is the only reason why she leads the popular vote. But all the other polling firms, all the other metrics have pointed to an R favorable environment, especially Gallup, where they're predicting around an R+1 favorable environment, which would mean that this D+7 sampling should be at least a tied sample, which would put Trump ahead in the popular vote. And Trump actually leads the independents by 10 in this Marist poll. So once again, does not make sense. So take that into consideration when you're looking at 538. But either way, it is a pretty good site to look at. They have Harris up by 1.8%, which is down from around 3 points at her high point. So once again, a similar trend to RCP, where she has been losing around half of her lead. They are pretty agreeing. They agree quite a little bit on what her margin will be. They're probably saying that she's going to win the popular vote. If we take all the margin of errors together, she's going to win the popular vote by either just over a tied margin all the way up to D+2. And the funny thing is, in all of those scenarios where she would win between 0 and 2% in the popular vote, it is very hard for her to win the Electoral College. So let's now look at these swing states in 538. Let's start with Arizona. They do have Trump up by 1.8% in Arizona. He has been gaining from the past couple months. In the state of Georgia, he also leads by 2%, and that's actually a little bit higher than an RCP. But generally, once again, these two agree a lot upon these margins, which is good. It's good to see different pollsters agree on margins. We have the state of Michigan, which she had led by almost 3 points in the middle of September. Now it has collapsed to basically a tie. And this is where the disparity becomes a little bit more because RCP has Trump up by 1.2. So they are a little bit different in terms of the state of Michigan. Let's go to the state of Nevada now, where we see she did lead by around a point or a point and a half. Now she leads by half a point. So once again, a little bit behind the value on RCP, where Trump leads by 0.8, but not that much of a difference. So they're agreeing a little bit on that. North Carolina, Trump is up by around half a point, which is very similar, actually the exact same as RCP, where he leads in by half a point. And then we have the state of Pennsylvania, if I could find it over here, where Trump leads by 0.3, extremely similar to the margin on RCP. And finally, in the state of Wisconsin, where it is once again basically a tie, she had been leading by up to 3 points, but that has collapsed basically to a tie, which is very, very similar to the race on RCP. So these two states are fairly agreeing on most of these state polls, apart from the state of Michigan, where their disparity is a little bit more. So we can use these two polling and kind of put them together to really show us what's going on in the country. And in that sort of way, I kind of can construct this map basically on those polls. We're going to get the lean states for Harris out of the way. I still do think she is going to win the states of Minnesota and Virginia in a lean column. We can actually check polling out of those two states. We can see here in the state of Minnesota that she is up by around 5 to 6 points. And in the state of Virginia, she does lead by a narrower margin than 2020 once again, but still around 7 percentage points, a little bit more than I expect. I don't even think she'll win it by 7. But keep in mind in 2020 that Joe Biden was overestimated by 2 points. So if you put that in the metric, she'll win by what I think she'll win by around 5-ish. We're left here with the most competitive 7 battleground states, and putting all that data together as well as Polymarket's data, Trump does have a 60% chance to win the election right now. He has surged in the past couple weeks and has maintained steady at around 60 to 40 chance of winning. He is favored to win Wisconsin, 56% chance, 56% chance in Michigan, 57% chance in Pennsylvania. Nevada is very close, but the thing with Nevada is that Trump has actually skyrocketed over the past day. Actually, it was a 50-50 race. And yesterday, when early data started coming in, it looked extremely favorable for Republicans, and they surged. And they gained 5 points. Democrats lost 5 points. And now that Donald Trump is leading, the chances to win by 10 points. Arizona, 70% chance to win. This is his most favorable state according to polls and betting odds. The state of Georgia, 68% chance. And North Carolina, 64% chance. And let's remember, Polymarket is the largest betting site. And there's billions of dollars put into here, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people putting their own money into these markets. So they should be taken actually more accurately than some polls, because they have been proven to be more accurate. People are literally putting their money where their mouth is. So it's fairly interesting to see these numbers actually on these swing states. And that, leads me to believe, and all that data put together can help me analyze this map right here. And the first thing I would do was put North Carolina and Georgia in that lean column. They deserve to be in that lean column because Republicans seem to be doing very, very well in these two states, especially. Arizona probably right now looks like the strongest state, but since North Carolina also went to Trump in 2020 by 1.3%, it's very hard to see Kamala Harris actually flip the state when it voted Republican at a D plus 4.5 environment. And now we're seeing an environment that is probably a fourth and maybe like a half of what that's going to be. Who knows? Maybe Trump could even win the popular vote, since most of these pollsters do say that. We're just going to have to wait and see. The state of Georgia, I would also be putting now in that column because we do see a lot of early numbers out of there as well. And Nevada is going in that tilt column. Once again, early numbers are looking extremely worrisome for Democrats. Their Clark County margins have been cut like almost entirely. And in the rest of the state, Republicans are actually leading in the early votes. In Arizona, Republicans are leading the early votes by around 30,000. In North Carolina, it's neck and neck right now in the early votes. Democrats back in 2020 and in 2022 won that by a considerable amount. Same thing with Georgia. All of these Sun Belt states are shaping up to be the Republican favored states that I had predicted. And when we're left with these three states, right now, I put all of them in Trump's tilt column. The polls do say that he is the slight favorite or that it is a complete toss-up. And so all those data points together, early voting also looks good. Democrats seem to be getting a lot of turnout in Wayne County, so we're going to see how that changes the race. But right now the polls are looking increasingly better for the former president. In Wisconsin, they don't really register by party, so it's hard to analyze that. And in Pennsylvania, Democrats' advantage went from around 1.2 million in the 2020, I think maybe even 1.4 million in the 2020 election. Now it's around 300,000. And I don't see how that could be a positive sign for them. But once again, we're going to leave that for another video when we do get more data. But that's going to be all for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe, like all my content, put all your suggestions in the section below, and I'll check you guys out in the next one.